Please be seated. The court is now back in session. The prosecution, you may continue putting your questions to the witness.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Sopang, if we could return to this document again and discuss some of the features. You said earlier that telegram number 54 represented a number, a sequential number, if I understood correctly. Was that a number that was allocated by the sender, and did it represent the number of telegrams sent up to that point?
This is not an outgoing telegram. It was a telegram coming from Mondulkiri.
Thank you. I think we may be having some interpretation difficulties. What does 54 represent? Does it represent the number of telegrams sent already, or is it something else?
This telegram 54 is a telegram sent, and it has already been decoded. It is not an outgoing message. This telegram was received, was decoded, and number 54 is a sequential number. So it means there was 53, and then this is 54. It's a sequential number.
Thank you. Would that sequential number start from 0 in every month, in every year, or would it simply continue from 0 until whatever number ultimately is arrived at?
The sequential number starts from 01 up to 99, and when it reaches 99, it resets to 01. So that's how the sequential number is used.
Thank you. You said that this particular telegram, came from Mondulkiri. How were you able to identify it as a telegram coming from Mondulkiri?
I used to decode such a message, and the person who signed this telegram by the name of Sarun. That's how I knew it.
So you knew that Sarun held a position in the Mondulkiri region. Is that correct?
Yes. Sarun was the sector secretary in charge of Mondulkiri province.
Thank you. Now, if we look at the bottom of that page, just below Sarun's name, we see a date, 23rd April 1978, and then we see a line stating received on the 23rd April 1978 at 2300 hours. The words received on 23 April 1978, is it correct that that was written at the receiving end? One would assume K18, but perhaps you can enlighten us.
The date of the receipt was the one that I personally noted after I received and decoded it on a particular date at a particular hours. Then I would write it last. That is after the date of the message itself. So this message was sent on the 23rd April 1978, and it was decoded and completed on the 23rd April 1978 at 2300 hours. That is after the completion of the decoding of this message.
And then we see below that line another line which is as follows: copied to, Uncle, Uncle Norn, Uncle Van, Uncle Vaughan, office, documents. Can I ask you first, who placed those words on the page, copied to, etc.?
The one who had the authority to write that line was my supervisor, Mr. Pond and Mr. Tay. As for me, I only had the authority to write down the date of the receipt and the completion time of the decoding of the message.
Thank you. When we look at that line, we see that it is typed, same as the rest of the telegram. So, was it the case that you were given an instruction by Pon and Tay as to who this would be copied to, and you would type those words on the page? Or was that done later by Pon and Tay separately?
The line starting with the copy to, I can only put the date of the receipt and the time of the completion, and that line was later on used with a carbon copy for the distribution to respected people. Or to which uncle based on those who had the authority to copy the message to.
Just so I have a crystal clear understanding, did you type only one copy, or did you, in your office, after translating, actually type 4 or 5 using carbon paper?
I use carbon papers, and the use of the carbon copies were based on the decision made by Pond or Tay. And sometimes I just type that in because the instructions were already given in advance regarding whom the document or the message shall be copied to. But for other messages which I was not clear before I typed copy to, I needed to ask for the authority first as to whom I saw typed in that line.
Thank you very much for that clarification. If we can look at the specific individuals listed in that line, these are the names that you gave in your statement: E3/64, Khmer ERN 00328041, French 004111709, and English 0033405. You looked at the telegram and you interpreted those words as follows: Grand Uncle Nuon referred to Nuon Chea, copied to Grand Uncle referred to Pol Pot, Grand Uncle Nuon was Nuon Chea, Grand Uncle Van was Ieng Siri, Grand Uncle Vaughan referred to Vaughan Vet, who was the Minister of Finance. Office referred to Office 870, and document was to be kept in the archive. The office place was different from the document place. For the office, it was kept in the Office 870, but for the document, it was kept at the translation place. Just want to make sure that that is a correct summary of how you interpreted each of these names on the page.
The statement that you just read is correct. That is my true statement.
Thank you. When you were instructed by Pon or Tay to create a number of copies, what did you do next?
After I typed it, then I prepare the message, put it in envelopes and sent to K1.
And would it be the case that 4 or 5 copies would be placed in the same envelope, or did you use separate envelopes for the different people who are named on the copy to line?
Those messages were put in only one envelope, but at K1, Mr. Pon or Tae would organize it for the sending to respective recipient based on the copy lines too.
So, if we return briefly to the handwriting in the top left-hand corner, Uncle Norn, which you indicated you thought was the handwriting of Tae. In this case, am I correct in understanding from what you have said that that handwriting was placed on the document after it arrived at K1?
This handwriting I did not see this handwriting when I encoded the message. This is the handwriting belongs to Tae, who would understand that the content of the message related to Noon. For that reason, he wrote that word Noon or Uncle Noon on this message.
How did you deliver the envelope containing several copies of the telegram to K1?
At my office, there was a messenger whom I can use to deliver the letter to K1, and there was a post there at K1. So I instructed the messenger from my office to deliver the letter to that post in front of K1 office.
Now, just looking at those names for another brief moment, in your second statement at page Khmer 00294536, French 003794433, and English 004833964, document E3/67. You said the following: almost all telegrams were copied to the uncles, as I had seen in the past, but in case any uncle was not present, it was not necessary to make a copy for him. Could you confirm whether that is accurate, an accurate summary of your statement, that almost all telegrams would be copied to all uncles, and that one of the uncles or more a copy would not be made for him if he was absent?
That is correct, and my statement is correct. Before I type the recipient of the copy through, I would seek the permission first as to whom or to which uncles the message shall be copied through. In certain messages, the message would be copied only to uncle and Uncle Noon and not Uncle Wan, for instance, because he was not in. So it would only be put Uncle Noon to office and document based on the instructions I received. And in certain cases, some uncles were absent or not present. For instance, Mr. Ingsari, sometimes he was overseas as he was in charge of foreign affairs. When he was not in the country, then the message would not be copied to him, because there would be no correspondence back from him as he was overseas.
Thank you. In your first statement, E3/64, at Khmer ERN 00328-037, French 004117005, and 00334-055. You said the following. Question: as you understood it, did those copies reach the hands of their receivers? Answer: I believed they received them because those messengers and translators who had been recruited to work there were very loyal. Question: based on your recollection, were there any telegrams which had been sent out never reached their receivers? Answer: I never met that. And finally, question: was it a big problem if that happened? Answer: definitely there would be a problem. Is that a correct summary of your statement to the investigators?
The statement is correct as I stated back then. I also said, yes, there would be a problem as you raised, because in some cases, some messages which were confidential messages but were leaked, it could be the result of the messenger who could be disloyal, or it could be the person who organized the decoded message, whether the coded messages reach the appropriate recipient or it fails to be delivered, or that it was missing. If the message was missing or the message was leaked, it was entirely based on those uncles, whether they put or they keep the document properly or carelessly and it was leaked. So when it comes to the leaking of the confidential information from the message or the missing of any message, it could happen at various stages.
Putting aside those situations, do I understand correctly from this passage that we read that your understanding was that the recipients, in this case the uncles, received the messages that were sent to them?
It is my conclusion that majority of the messages were received by them. The reason is that they organized and used the loyal people to work on this aspect. They were well disciplined. And if they were careless, they would not be used to work on this confidential nature kind of work.
In the course of your work, did you have meetings with PON or TE or others to discuss the performance of your duties to make sure that they were properly performed?
There were meetings to draw experience from our work, and we would pinpoint the strong or the weak points from our performance through those meetings. The meetings were organized monthly or sometimes every 2 or 3 months among my superiors.
3
And that was both to discuss the technical aspect and the performance, and to improve the performance so that our work would be more perfect.
Thank you. Looking at your second statement, E3/67, Khmer ERN 00294-548, French ERN 00374-942, and English 00483974, you say the following, and this is at paragraph 38. They gave verbal instructions. I listened to the instructions from PON in meetings with him. If one wanted to give instruction, they came down to instruct us. I implemented this instruction. That is why I have survived until now. Whatever unit the content of the telegram concerned, it was sent to that unit. Looking at that passage, Mr. Sopang, one gets the impression of a very organized and disciplined unit. Am I accurate in coming to that view?
Regarding that statement, it talked about the moral behavior that a woman was raped. And probably for that reason, that's why there was a handwriting of Uncle Noon up there.
Thank you. Just returning to my question, the passage from your statement seems to describe a very disciplined operation, and you say that you survived because you followed instructions. Am I correct in concluding that this was a highly organized and well-performing operation.
So that is true. That is maintaining secrecy and maintaining the principle and the work performance within my office that I implemented subsequently based on the instructions, the principles, and the disciplines set out by the upper echelon. In particular, in regards to the functioning of my office.
Thank you. Do you know who Pon and Tay received their instructions from?
Pon and Tay worked directly with Pol Pot. And they also had the role of the secretaries. All the instructions that they gave to me were not their own instructions. They were instructed from the above, or that they took notes in the meeting with the standing committee before those instructions were relayed by them to me.
Thank you. Do I understand correctly that sometimes the instructions which they gave to you to encrypt came following deliberations or discussions or decisions of the Standing Committee?
The instruction did not exist in writing, or whether it is an evidence of the meeting from the Standing Committee. However, because they were close to the chairman of the Standing Committee, then they would just relay the instructions from the Standing Committee to me.
Thank you. Now, returning to that document, D200/3.2 or E3/513, the telegram that we've been discussing, you confirmed earlier that office was a reference to Office 870, which was a different place from document. So just starting from documents, do I understand correctly that that copy would be held at Pon's office at K1?
The word office in the copied line means that a copy of that message will be maintained at Office 870. It was a part of within the K1 compound. As for the document, at my office, I also maintain a copy at my office that is referred if in reference to the documents that are encoded. So if they need to verify the nature of the original document, they would come to my office.
Thank you for clarifying that. Would that mean that where you translated a document, it would be a copy would be retained at your office, and if it was Pon's team at K1, then they would retain a copy?
But
Yes, that is correct. I would usually maintain the last carbon copy, which was not really that clear, but for those cleared carbon copies, they will be sent to those brothers or uncles.
Thank you. Do you know what the words Office 870 represented?
response. Office 870 was the office for the party center.
គឺដែលមាន
And Pol Pot was the chairperson of this office.
Thank you. Is that designation, Office 870, that you just described, the same or different than Committee 870, which you've also discussed in your statements?
Response. 870 was the party center, or at the same time called the committee of the center, and there had not been any change prior to 1975 or after 1975. The term 870 had been referred to as the party center, and it remained the same all along.
Thank you. Looking at your first statement, while we're on this issue, again E3/64, and this is at Khmer ERN 00328-036, French 00411-704, and English 00334-053. We have the following passage. Question: what did, quote, to the Committee 870, end quote, mean, and whom did that refer to? Answer: it referred to the entire Central Committee. Is that a correct summary of your statement in relation to Committee 870?
Response. Yes, it is correct, because 870 did not refer only to any individual or brothers. For example, if it noted 870 it would have been referred to the Center Committee rather than any individual.
តែការជូនមកវិញ
And when the letter was returned and if it addressed to respected brother, it means it would be referred to Pol Pot, and if it is referred to as 870, then it referred to the Central Committee.
Thank you for that clarification. And just to conclude on this document, in the copy line, we see both uncle, which you indicated was Pol Pot, and office, which is Office 870. Am I correct in concluding that there were two copies in this case, one to Pol Pot personally and one to Office 870?
Response. No, normally it was rare that only two copies could have been made because each message had to be copied into at least 4 copies. And when it comes to rather uncles, they were different from the office. Office here referred to Office 870 of the Angkar, when uncle could be referred to Pol Pot.
Thank you. Now, having looked at the format and content of that telegram, what I would like to do next is go through a series of other telegrams. We will spend less time on them, but I would like to see if you're able to assist us in understanding their format and the way in which they were processed. Mr. President, the next document.
Je voudrais faire une remarque à propos de la dernière question de Monsieur le procureur. C'est une remarque pour les transcrits. Il me semble que la question du procureur est contestable.
As far as the submission made by the prosecutor shows that there is some discrepancy between the text and the audio regarding the word Committee 870. In the text of the written statement read by the prosecutor, it is indicated that the word Committee 870 meant Central Committee. However, when we read the audio transcript by the tribunal, we find that by giving that answer, the witness has said that the Committee 870 meant the entire Central Committee, that is the Standing Committee. So the audio transcript contains an answer which is different from what the prosecutor deliberately cited, and I think we should say so without waiting for the cross-examination to begin.
Mr. President, I would object to this intervention in the strongest possible terms. This is a completely inappropriate intervention. I took the witness through his statement. The witness spoke in his own words and described each of the officers. This is an attempt, Your Honours, to broadcast to the witness what he should be saying, and it should be sanctioned. Your Honours should warn counsel not to make interjections of this kind. If there is a proper objection, it should be made. This is not an objection, it is a comment, and my friend can take up the issue in his cross-examination.
The President. Counsel, I think we should make sure that we have two stages before us today. Now, the witness is before us, and evidence is being examined during the court proceedings. However, when it comes to discrepancies, it is your sole right to put questions, to seek clarification or credibility with regard to the statement given. And we know that it is the time when you allotted the time to do so, then you can do it. Because we, the chamber, get used to the impeaching questions. And indeed, we understand that you can do so during your time when you have the floor to put questions to the witness. And you should not be allowed to do that again when the other counsel or party is on his feet putting his questions. So, co-prosecutor, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Moving on to that second document, Mr. Sapang. Your Honours, this is document E3/1679, and with your leave, I will give the witness a copy. It is another telegram, in this case dated the 30th of November 1975. And with your permission, I'll give the witness a copy.
The President, indeed, you may proceed, but please, can you repeat the identification of the document?
Yes, Mr. President, it is E3/1679. It's a single-page telegram in Khmer. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Sapang, this is a document from 1975, so it is significantly earlier in time than the last one we saw. If we look at the heading of this telegram, it is entitled Telegraph Number 15, respectfully submitted to Comrade Brother Pol. Am I correct in assuming that was Brother Pol Pot?
Response: yes, it is correct.
And when we look at the bottom of that page in Khmer, and perhaps it could be broadcast on the screen for everyone to see, below the date 30 November 1975, we see the name Chon being the author of the telegram. Are you able to identify who this individual is?
Response: I do not recall this person because I was not the one who decoded this telegram. It was meant to be managed by the person in the East Zone.
Thank you. Now, without going into the content of the telegram in any great detail, it discusses the dispersal of the Muslim people in the East Zone. And it seeks certain instructions from the centre. Is it accurate, or and tell us if you don't know, this document originated in the East Zone?
Response. It is correct to say that this document was reported to have been sent to Brother Paul, and it was from the East Zone. But the content of the message was not about Muslim, it is about Islam.
Thank you. Would a message such as this normally come from the secretary of the zone, or would it be a different individual?
Response. I don't know who was the author of the message, but it is a routine that whoever was the secretary of the zone, then he would be entitled to report directly to Brother Paul.
And do you recall who was the secretary of the East Zone in 1975?
Father.
Response. It was Sao Pum who was the East Zone's secretary at that time.
Thank you. Now, looking at the CC or copied to line in this document, we see that it was to be copied to Brother Norn, Brother Dawn, Brother Yem, and archives. If I can ask you first, in this case we don't see a reference to office. Is that unusual in your experience?
Response. It is strange because I never noted such people could be copied to like that, but I knew other uncles, and it is also strange to me that the document was not copied to an office. So the CC section is strange to me.
Now, looking at Brother Norn, in your first statement at Khmer ERN 0032804, French 004111707, and English 00334 you said the following: this telegram was originally sent to Pol Pot alone, but the person in charge of the telegram knew that this matter must also be sent to the person who was in charge of people like Nuon Chia in order to find a solution. Does that record accurately your description of this line in the telegram.
Response: Yes, I do, and it is the correct statement as what I already stated.
Thank you. Now, looking at Brother Dawn, in that same passage that I quoted earlier from your first statement, you were asked who Brother Dawn and Brother Yem were, and you said the following: I did not know clearly about these two persons. Yem could be a member of the Assembly, and Dawn might be the chairman of an office working with Nunchia or Kusampang, or a member of the Assembly responsible for the North Zone. Is that also accurate as a description of your words in relation to Brother Dawn?
Response: Yes, it is correct. I never know who Dawn was. Indeed, when it comes to Brother Nuon, I know that he was Nuon Chia, and I never know for sure who Dawn or Yam could have been.
Thank you. I'd like to, while we're dealing with the issue of Dawn, move on to another document a little bit later in time and see if it assists in understanding his role. Mr. President, this is document E3/1103. It is another telegram dated the 7th of November 1976. With your leave, I have a copy for the witness.
The President, you may now proceed, and court officer is now instructed to bring the hard copy of the document for the witness. And the document is allowed to be put up on the screens.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe we have it ready, so if it could be projected by the AV unit, we will be grateful. Just in exploring the role of this individual, Mr. Sapang, I want to look at this document in a little bit of detail. It starts with telegram number 2, to missed and respected Comrade Dawn. In paragraph number 1, it says, we have already received your telegram about materials. In paragraph 2, it discusses the request by this region for 10,000 coconuts to be provided. And then in paragraph 3, it says the following: we would also like to inform you that the sector wants to send a youth comrade from Radio Communication Unit to further study the radio communications coding. We request to have this comrade participated in the upcoming course at the party's school. More than these, we would like to confirm the travelling documents. Should travelling car be registered and a mission letter for travelling from Sector 105 to Phnom Penh be issued? ? we would like to know whether Ankara requires these letters to be issued. Now, this is signed by an individual called Chan, and it indicates that, or it seems to indicate that it was from Sector 105. Are you able to identify the author of that document?
Response. "105 was an autonomous zone, or rather sector, in the northeast zone. However, I don't know the person by the name of Chan who signed on this. I am familiar with Zarun, but not Chan."
Thank you. Returning to the first two paragraphs, there is a discussion about materials and a request from the sector for coconuts to be provided and also for seeds. Does that refresh your memory in any way as to what role Duon was playing?
Response. Duon, perhaps, was the person who managed the materials according to this text. However, whether Duon was tasked with overseeing anything by the central, or rather standing committee, it is not my knowledge.
And in the third paragraph, where there is a discussion about a youth comrade being sent to study radio communication, coding, is that a reference to training to be provided at your school? This was dated the 7th of November 1976. I wonder if that helps you recall.
Response. This message is about the radio communication. However, there was part of the message which was about the coding session. I don't know whether individuals would be sent to the radio communication course and the coding session, whether there was only one person or two people. Because radio communication session was a different part from the coding section, so I'm afraid I don't quite understand the message.
Do you recall whether Duon had any role in helping organize the training for these youth comrades coming from, in this case, Sector 105?
Response. Duon was not tasked with educating people on radio communication or the coding. If people would like to be trained on radio communication, they would be asked to contact K18 that was tasked with that particular field. If it was about the coding, then I would be the person who would be asked.
Thank you. This document was copied to Brother Nuon office and documentation. Are you able to tell us why it would not have been copied to Pol Pot?
Response. No, I'm not the person who made the decision to copy to other individuals made their own choice, and I don't know about this. But so far as I know, as part of the instruction, if the telegrams are relevant to any particular section, then the section people of each of that sections had to be the one who had to solve the problems. For example, when it comes to the production, the seedlings or the seeds or materials, these matters were relevant to the office. So the standing committee already assigned Duan as the person in charge. That's why Duan was copied. And when the office was copied, it suggests that Brother Duan would also be the person who received this message that was addressing to the office. The President, thank you, Mr. Co-Prosecutor and witness. It is now an appropriate moment for lunch adjournment. The chamber will adjourn until 1:30 p.m. Court officer is instructed to assist the witness during the adjournment and have him return to the courtroom by 1:30 p.m. Counsel for Mr. Nuon Chea, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've just been informed that Nuon Chea is suffering from a backache, a headache, and a general lack of concentration. He would therefore like to spend the afternoon in the holding cell, and that is our application this morning, that he be permitted to do so. Thank you.
The President. The Chamber notes the request of Mr. Nuon Chea through his counsel, in which he asked that he be allowed to observe the proceedings from his holding cell due to his health concerns. Counsel has made it clear that his waiver would be submitted immediately before the Chamber. The Chamber therefore grants such request. Mr. Nuon Chea is now permitted to observe the proceedings from his holding cell, and with that, Mr. Nuon Chea has expressly waived his rights to participate directly in the courtroom. The Chamber would like counsel for Mr. Nuon Chea to submit this waiver signed or given thumbprint by Mr. Nuon Chea to the Chamber, and AV booth officers are now instructed to ensure that the AV equipment is well connected to the holding cell so that Mr. Nuon Chea can observe the proceedings from there. Security personnel are now instructed to bring Mr. Nuon Chea and Keo Sampon to their each respective holding cell and have Mr. Keo Sampon return to the courtroom when the next session resumes in the afternoon at 1:30. The court is adjourned.